Hey everybody, welcome back to Front Porch Catholic, where we talk about the grit and glory of domestic life on our Ohio hobby farm. Today, I have something quite different to offer you regarding format and content. This is just an audio file, so you can go about your day, just give us a listen. Also, the content, this is a presentation that we recorded of my husband presenting a case in front of our local community. If you're watching this video, you probably know what it's about. It's about preserving our parishes and our priests. So if you want to share this with anybody that you know and love, please feel free. We just want to speak the truth with charity and present our case. I'm going to attempt to provide the PowerPoint presentation in the description here on YouTube. And if you need to get in touch with us or want to get in touch with us, please leave a comment or find our email address on our YouTube channel. So whether you're new or a longtime subscriber of Front Porch Catholic, we really appreciate you being here. We welcome you to listen and to share this content with those that you know and love. All right, without further ado, here's my husband.
Thank you, Vanna.
Thank you, everybody, for coming tonight. I'll do my best to speak as loudly as I possibly can. The presentation will be up here, and there are handouts, and you can, again, submit your email, and we'll make sure the handout gets to you as well through that medium. Just a couple of logistical points. If you didn't pick up 2 note cards when you came in, somebody's got note cards and they'll come around with them. One is for questions. Any question that you have during the evening tonight, you can give to my beautiful wife, Erica, over here, and she'll collect them. And then at the end of the presentation, if we have time, I'll do my best to answer questions. The other note card is at the end of the night to put up here in the basket on your way out, with your email address on it or contact information, so that if you want to be kept up to date on the process, and we'll explain what that is going to look like a little bit later on, put your email address on a card, put it in the basket, and you'll be added to the database of people that are kept in the loop. So that's what the 2 cards are for. Questions at any time, give them to Erica, and then your note card over here on the way out tonight. So kind of what is the point this evening? Well, I guess I should introduce myself. Most of you know who I am. I'm Joe Schmeezing. My mom and dad are here, my beautiful wife, some of my siblings and assorted relatives. I've been a part of Holy Angels Parish since I was baptized, I suppose, 41-ish years ago. Aside from 3 years in college, I've been in Holy Angels Parish the rest of my life. When we moved back to the Sydney area, got married, we chose to be part of Holy Angels Parish, even though we were at various spots around the county. It is my parish. It's all I've ever known. So very briefly tonight, I suppose we're going to cover I'm hoping to cover 4 points. So it's really 4 points, not the point, but oh well. The first is, what is a parish and why is it good to be one? The second, what is the Beacon's plan? Specifically, what about the Beacon's plan will affect our parish? What effect will that plan have on our parish? The third is why we oppose the Beacon's plan for our parish. I'll speak to that specifically later. Then what are we doing? What will we be doing? And what are we asking all of you to do to preserve our parish and our priests? So those are the 4 points we'll cover, starting at the very beginning, which is, what is a parish? As defined in the Church's Law Code, which is kind of the guiding principle here, a parish is a definite community of the Christian faithful established on a stable basis within a particular church. So kind of 3 parts: a definite community of the Christian faithful established on a stable basis within a particular church. We certainly meet the definition of a parish. I should have looked it up, but Holy Angels has been around for around 200 years within the same place, within the same community of Christian faithful. A parish, furthermore, is a juridic person. What does that mean? It means that we exist within the church's law framework. The parish exists within the church's law framework as a real thing that has rights and privileges. As an American citizen would exist within America's law code. As an American citizen, we have certain rights to trials and things like that. We have to be told what we're arrested for, all sorts of things that exist as rights because we're American citizens. A juridic person in canon law, in the church's law, has rights, privileges, and responsibilities as well. A church building is not a juridic person. it does not have the same rights and privileges that a parish has. It's one of the reasons why it's important to be a parish and not just a church. A bishop, as a parish, a bishop is required by canon law, by the church's own law, to provide for the pastoral care of that parish by appointing a pastor. A pastor must be appointed to every parish. It's part of the rights and privileges of a parish. The bishop does not have to assign any priest or pastor to a church. That is one of the other differences. Pastors of parishes themselves have certain rights and privileges that ordinary priests do not have, precisely because they are pastors of parishes. Among other things, they have an obligation to say Mass. I think it's at least twice a year in the parish, in the church. They have an obligation to baptize in the church. Oddly enough, they must notify the bishop if they are going to be outside of the territory of the parish for more than 7 days, and other odd things that are within canon law. Maybe even more importantly than being a juridic person, I would say, is that the parish is the incarnation of the church. For us, the parish is the church. It's where we go to be baptized. It's where we go to confess our sins. It is where we go to worship God. It is where we go to meet the rest of the church, the rest of the people of the church. The parish and the church are really inseparable entities. They are the same for most of us. The Catechism specifically says, it is the place where the faithful can be gathered together for the Sunday celebration of the Eucharist. And I think it's noteworthy that the Catechism says the parish is the place where the faithful are gathered for the Sunday liturgy. It does not say that a church is where the faithful gather for Sunday liturgy. The parish is where they gather. So it is kind of three things. A parish is the people, it is a territory, a specific geographic territory, and it is a church as well. It is intended to be a building. As we'll discuss later on, it's why when this all goes down, as some of us who were here last time learned, there will be one parish church. There will be other churches within a territory, but there can only be in canon law, one parish church. So, what does the Beacons plan do? I am not, the point of this presentation, which I hope someday to present to all of the members of Holy Angels Finance Council and the Parish Council, if they will listen. The point is not to critique the Beacons plan at large. It is specific to what will happen to our parish, specifically to its extinction. So, with that in mind, that's what it's very focused. I hope it's very focused, anyways, tonight. Specific to our plan, the Beacons plan calls for a modification of our parish. That's the word. It's kind of a jargon term. Modification means your parish isn't going to be there anymore. To put not too fine a point on it. There are other modifications, but that's what we are facing, is what is called either an extinctive union or an extinctive merger. They're the same thing. It's two terms referring to the same process. There are other kinds of modification, but it is interesting to note that in our diocese, all of the parishes that are to be modified exactly the same way, which is through extinctive unions. We'll come to that when we examine just cause. In such a union, all of the parishes within our current grouping, that would be Holy Angels, St. Peter and Paul, St. Michael, and Sacred Heart, will all cease to exist as parishes. They will no longer be. They will not be juridic persons anymore in legal terms of the Church's law. What does that mean practically? It means that no baptismal certificate will ever be signed as Holy Angels Parish ever again. No marriage will ever take place in Holy Angels Parish ever again, or any of these other parishes. No money is able to be given to Holy Angels Parish because Holy Angels Parish will not exist. It will not be. There will be no reality of Holy Angels Parish in existence anymore. I'm not trying to be harsh. I just think that most of us, a year ago or whenever this started, did not realize that. So that is the reality. It will no longer be, none of them will be juridic persons. They will no longer have any rights or privileges as parishes. So what happens to us? Well, canon law requires that when there is an extinctive union or extinctive merger, all of the previous people, territory, and property has to become part of something new. We are not abandoned. I guess that is good. Right now, what is being proposed is that we will become a new entity. That new entity, assuming that it goes forward, will be called St. Joseph Pillar of Families Parish. What does this mean? It means that all property, all money, all bank accounts will be held by St. Joseph Pillar of Families. There will be no, church law does not allow for separation of the funds to different parishes because those parishes do not exist. It means that when your grandchild is baptized, or in our case, maybe, another child is baptized, it will not be baptized in Holy Angels Parish. It will now be baptized in St. Joseph Pillar of Families Parish. Will be buried out of St. Joseph Pillar of Families Parish. None of the others will exist anymore. So, in order to accomplish this, what has to happen? Pardon my bad job of putting together all the fonts in the PowerPoint presentation. Most of these have citations on them. If you sign up for the email, you'll get an email of the presentation. And in that case, all of the citations should be hyperlinked so you can actually go to the actual source if you so desire. This was drawn, all the information that says modification of parishes, modification catholicaoc.org, all of this is available on the Beacon's website for anybody who has the means, wherewithal, whatever, to go find it. So I'm not picking this out of a hat or some secret bank of knowledge that I have. It is posted on their website. It is also consistent with canon law. That's where they got this, from church law, mostly. So what are the steps here? And I apologize, it's very small, so hopefully you have something you can follow along there. Firstly, the need for an extinction of holy angels, if any need exists, is to be determined. There was supposed to be an evaluation of the need to extinguish, or what's called suppress, our parish. Secondly, the pastor must petition the archbishop to eliminate or suppress Holy Angels Parish. That cannot be initiated by the bishop. It must be initiated. It must be started. The letter must come from our pastor. This must be in writing, and it must be signed by the pastor. And this is sort of why I desire to present this to the Finance Council and the Parish Council. If you read the quote there, a majority of the members of the Pastoral Council and Finance Council of each parish involved each parish involved in the modification are to be in support of the proposal. This support should be recorded in writing with the signature of the council members included. This means that every council member from all of our parishes will be required, I don't know if that's the right term, to sign this request for modification. I think it is important that they know what is going to be expected of them. It is supposed to be approved of them, supported by them, and signed by them. Whatever our pastor writes to the bishop, and that request has to request our parish ceasing to exist. That has to be included. The bishop will then take it to his presbyteral council, which is a council of priests that he has. The bishop, after consulting with the presbyteral council and assuming he gets their support and approval, will issue a written decree that must include the following items. It must include the just cause for our extinction. We'll come to that again briefly. It must include what the new parish will be, its name, and who will be a part of it, what its territory will be. It must include how the temporal goods, which is what the church lingo is for all the stuff, the buildings, property, and bank accounts, it must include how the temporal goods of the former parishes will be disposed. Where will they go? As a side note, I'm not trying to blow this out of proportion, but it should be noted that when the bishop does that, he can decide whatever he wants. There is no limitation on how he must dispose of that property, those buildings, that stuff, or even the people. I guess I might as well deal with it now. Our bishop is 75. He has submitted his request for retirement. At any time, the Pope can accept that request, and he will no longer be our archbishop. We have no idea who the next archbishop will be or what they will think. It is going into the hands, you might say, of a complete stranger. At this point, once the archbishop issues his decree, which must be done in writing and submitted to our parish, we can appeal. We have 10 days to appeal this decree. It is first appealed to the bishop. There's a whole process. We will not get lost in the weeds because my wife is better at it than I am. So I just know that first it goes to the bishop. Assuming he does not accept our appeal, it would then go to the dicastery for the clergy, which is a Vatican office in Rome. And assuming that they do not accept our appeal, it could then be appealed to the Apostolic Signatura. If they don't accept our appeal, then we are out of luck. So, that's the process. It is all taken from the website. I don't think I'm blowing anything out of proportion. I'm pretty sure that's pretty cut and dried. So why do we then, and I'm speaking on behalf of the Committee for the Preservation of our Parish and our priests, why do we oppose the extinction of our parish? It is for the following reasons. Well, I guess let's see what we do not oppose. We do not oppose beacons per se as a plan to modify the diocese, to restructure some finances, maybe reassign priests, maybe group parishes together. Maybe some of us individually do, but that's not what our group is trying to do. We are not opposing beacons. We're not opposing working together with other parishes. I see that other parishes are here tonight. We're happy to work with you. We do not oppose our priest or our bishop as priests or bishops. Speaking for myself, I have great fondness for all of them. I am an employee of the bishop. I love our priests. I do not oppose either of them. We do not oppose the church. We do not want the church to fail in Sydney, Ohio. I don't think looking at the crowd, we want the church to fail. We do oppose specifically the extinction or the suppression of Holy Angels Parish for the following reasons. That is what we oppose. These are reasons that I have put together. I've tried to back them up as well as I can. I'm open to questions or comments later on, of course. Firstly, there is no just cause for our suppression or extinction. And I would like to quote to you from a document here. This was released by the Vatican, I believe, in 2020, 2019. The date is somewhere. As instructions. They issued instructions. These are not binding instructions, but they're instructions from the Vatican about how to modify parishes. What should be done when parishes are being modified. And remember, modifying means they're closing some. Modification always involves a closing of one. 2020, thank you. In 2020, this instruction was released. It says, moreover, the suppression of parishes by extinctive union, that's what's going to happen to ours, is legitimate for causes directly related to a specific parish. Some causes are not sufficient, such as, for example, the scarcity of diocesan clergy, the general financial situation of a diocese, or other conditions within the community that are presumably reversible and of brief duration. In other words, numerical consistency, lack of self-sufficiency, urban planning, etc. As a condition for the legitimacy of this type of provision, the extinctive union, the requisite motivations must be directly and organically connected to the interested parish community and not on general considerations or theories or based solely on principle. Unless someone has heard things that I have not heard, the criteria that we have heard as a basis for the closure of our parish, for the extinction of our parish, for the suppression of our parish, whatever term you want to use, are specifically highlighted by this instruction as illegitimate causes. Specifically the scarcity of clergy, which is in black and white, not supposed to be used as a cause for the extinction of a parish. Even on Beacon's own site, they state the following quote: "Jurisprudence means kind of the collection of canon law and how the church has ruled in the past." So jurisprudence indicates that an extinctive union should be the last choice when dealing with various problems of parochial life, insofar as other possible remedies should have at least been considered beforehand and ruled out. Our contention is that the extinction of Holy Angels Parish is not the last choice, and other considerations have not been considered and not ruled out. And therefore, it is not just to first go to the suppression of our parish. That should be the last possible case. In fact, if we read canon law and the instruction of the Roman Missal, the pretty clear supposition is that this is for parishes that can no longer function as parishes. Second objection to the extinction of our parish is that this is not specific to our parish. It says, and I quote again, "The reasons for modifying a particular parish must be relevant to the individual parish." It should be something that is wrong, irreversible for Holy Angels Parish or for St. Michael's Parish, or etc. We cannot see any need for our parish to be eliminated or how the elimination of our parish will solve any of the problems that we face. I would say there is no crisis. Not to toot our own horn too much, but over the last 5 years, baptisms are relatively stable. We have the numbers over the last 5 years. They're available. I can cite those later on if you want. Finances are relatively stable. There are no massive deferred maintenance issues, which is always a just cause thing if the building's falling apart. Mass attendance over the last 5 years is stable. We have virtually unchanged numbers over the last 5 years. We are a parish full of life and evangelization. Many of us saw the letter. Many of us signed the letter that was sent to our pastor requesting that we not be modified. In that letter was included an extensive list of all of the various ministries and outreaches of Holy Angels Parish. Many in this crowd either started or were involved in or are currently involved in those outreaches, and so we know them intimately. Vocations to the priesthood and religious life are coming out of our parish. It does not seem to be a parish that is in dire straits or near extinction. The instructions... sorry, I lost my place. The instructions for modifying a parish specifically state that it should never be done simply on the basis of an overarching diocesan plan. And I quote from the instruction, "Consequently, it is considered contrary to canonical norms to issue a single provision aimed at producing a reorganization of a general character, either of the entire diocese or a part of it, or of a group of parishes even," and so forth. And certainly that seems to be why we are being suppressed, not because of a need particular to our parish. So remember, this is all our rebuttal, you might say, of a just cause. We are saying there is no just cause because we're not in crisis, there is no need specific to our parish, and instead it seems to be part of a bigger plan that we are simply a part of, which is not a just cause for the extinction of a parish. It is not due to the lack of clergy. Firstly, lack of clergy is specifically cited as not a legitimate means to suppress a parish. Ever. Secondly, bishops have the responsibility to assign pastors to parishes, not parishes to pastors. There's maybe a finer point there, but the parish exists as the community of faithful. It can continue to exist for a time, even without a pastor, while a pastor is waiting to be assigned. There are creative ways to pastor a parish, which are highlighted again in the instruction from the Vatican. John Paul II wrote a letter to the clergy in which he highlighted some creative ways to set up a pastorship of a parish. It is true there must be a priest who oversees, but there are very, very creative structures, including groups of priests who oversee parishes, etc. Even were it permissible, even if it were a permissible cause, we do not see any dire or irreversible trend regarding available priests. The numbers that I have here were drawn from an article on pillar.com. They are also part of the report. There's a little variation in some numbers, but you can ask questions about that at the end if you like. There are approximately 206 parishes in our diocese. Some numbers say 211, some say 206. I couldn't figure out which one it is, so I went with 206. Before Beacons, these had been assigned to 110 pastors. In the next 15 years, approximately 58 of these pastors will reach the canonically required retirement age of 75. So, in other words, right now, about 58 of them are over the age of 60. We do have an elderly group of pastors. That is true. The diocese allows for retirement at the age of 70, but it is not required until 75. And so we have pastors currently serving as pastors who are over the age of 70. In the next 15 years, when 58 of these pastors will retire, the projection is that approximately 81 new priests will be ordained in our diocese. We have an average over the last 10 years of 5.4 ordinations per year for priests. And all I did was multiply 5.4 times 15. I think I did the math right. I did it on a calculator, so it should be good. 81 new priests will be ordained. That is a net gain of priests, not a net loss of priests in the diocese over the next 15 years. In the next couple of decades, if you take that a little bit further, because we have a large group of older priests and a large group of younger priests and very few priests in the middle, after this large group of older priests retires, we'll have very few retirements of priests per year. Very few. Some years none, one. In the next couple of decades, 20 years or so, the projection is that we will have an increase in total priests in our diocese from the current 143 active priests to 189 active priests. The solution sought by the Beacons plan to specifically priests, cleric shortage, we contend has worked contrary to its stated end. It was supposed to help parish priests, and I'm just asking the rhetorical questions. Are the priests more available now or less available now? Are pastors more stressed now or less stressed now? Are priests spending less time traveling or more time traveling? Are they spending less time in meetings or more times in meetings? Is there greater unity and connection between people and their priests or less connection between people and their priests? Is there a greater focus on evangelization and the mission of the church or a greater focus on management and the plan? I would contend that creating mega parishes of 5 to 7 current parishes or more, I don't know what the biggest one is. I know there's some with 7 or 8 or 11 parishes. Creating mega parishes will make them even more difficult to manage, not easier, thus making it more difficult to find priests who are capable of being pastors, not less difficult. Having smaller numbers in a parish is a significant factor in encouraging vocations to the priesthood. Per capita priest to parishioner ratio is one of the major factors in priestly vocations. As we get larger and larger parishes, we find that priestly vocations decline per capita. Creating mega parishes is likely to therefore result in fewer vocations to the priesthood. The site for that is a study that was done and is reported on in the Catholic World Report. Again, if you get the email, the hyperlink is there for you to go read the article and look at the report yourself. So what are we asking? We ask that holy angels not be made extinct due to a lack of a just cause. An extinction is supposed to benefit the faithful of that parish. We ask, how will it benefit the faith of holy angels parishioners and the larger church community for holy angels to cease to exist? We do not see it. I have not heard a good answer. Secondly, it seems contrary to right reason that a healthy, thriving parish will somehow become healthier if it is exterminated. Specifically, we are asking the following people to do the following things. We are asking our pastor to not petition the bishop to request the suppression of our parish. It is within his rights as a pastor to evaluate our parish and either to request that or not request it. We are asking that he not request it, which is within his canonical rights as pastor. We are asking the parish council and the finance council not to sign the request agreeing to the elimination of our parish. The church specifically gives them the right to support or oppose such a request. We are asking the archbishop not to issue the decree suppressing our parish. If he does issue the decree, we are preparing to appeal immediately through the proper means all the way to the Vatican. What we are asking you to do is to sign up so that we are ready to contact you immediately. As I mentioned earlier, we have only 10 days to appeal once the decree is issued. We also ask that you join us in prayer and fasting for the sparing of our parish and our priests, because I think it's probably going to take a miracle. Finally, if you know any members of the parish councils or the finance councils, my goal is to someday present this specifically to them. That is why I prepared it. You're kind of the guinea pigs for the presentation. So if you know them, we will be contacting them in the near future to present this to them, to let them hear our case for opposing the extinction of our parish. I want to address one more thing because it has been brought up. Are we wrong for doing this? I don't want to be here. I don't want to do this. I dreaded it all day because I do not want to do this. It gives me no pleasure. I think most of us have better things to do tonight. I ask you to look at who signed the letter. Are they dissenters? People who hate their priests? People who hate the church? People who want to divide? Secondly, in each step outlined in the church's law and in the beacon's own plan, the lay faithful are required to participate. We are not wrong for participating. It is asked of us. It is sometimes required of us. In the following instances specifically, before the proposal for the modification was even put forward, and I quote, "The faithful of the parishes should also be informed of the proposal and the reasons for justifying it. They should be given opportunities to ask questions and express any concerns." We are clearly not wrong for asking questions and expressing our concerns. Secondly, when the pastor petitions the bishop, the diocesan bishop is to seek out all necessary information and, insofar as possible, hear those whose rights could be injured. That would be the parishioners of the parishes to be suppressed. Canon law requires the bishop to do that. It is not wrong of us to bring to the bishop the ways that we will be hurt. It is required in law and in the beacon's process. If the bishop issues a decree for our suppression and extinction, the period of time during which hierarchical recourse, which is the canonical process that allows us to appeal, may be presented, begins with the lawful notification of the decree. In other words, the church's law allows us to appeal. It would not allow us to appeal if it was wrong of us to appeal. It is within our rights and privileges as the lay faithful to do this, as members of our parishes. A couple of other points relevant to are we wrong for doing this. A very similar process is happening in other dioceses across America. We know of at least 14 other dioceses that have very similar processes going on right now. It seems there is some sort of concerted effort. One of those is the Archdiocese of St. Louis. If you came to the talk by the canon lawyer, he was involved in their appeals process. In the Archdiocese of St. Louis, the Archdiocese there issued the following statement. A pastor should respect the fact that the faithful can legitimately vindicate and defend their rights in the church, in the competent ecclesiastical forum, according to the norm of law. So in St. Louis, they are at least recognizing that the faithful have the right to appeal, to vindicate their rights in a court of law, which is what we are preparing to do. Both canon law and the Catechism of the Catholic Church state the following. According to the knowledge, competence, and prestige which the laity possessed, they have the right, and even at times the duty, to manifest to the sacred pastors their opinions on matters which pertain to the good of the church, and to make their opinion known to the rest of the Christian faithful, without prejudice to the integrity of faith and morals, with reverence towards their pastors, and attentive to common advantages and the dignity of persons. So it is not just that we are allowed to appeal to the bishop, but it is also that we are allowed to make our concerns known to the rest of the Christian faithful. Finally, God is good. The church, the bride of Christ, will prevail. Nevertheless, as the great theologian Dietrich von Hildebrand said, it would be thoroughly false to say that since God allows it, it must be according to his will. And so we have nothing to do but say, thy will be done, even if this devastation breaks our heart. Instead, he said, this is a false interpretation of resignation to God's will. The devastation of the vineyard of the Lord should instead fill us with the deepest pain and mobilize us for the fight, to be fought with all legitimate means. That is what we are asking to do. In 10 years, probably far less, we will have a new archbishop, likely a new pastor. Beacons will have run its course. But we, the parish of Holy Angels, will remain as the church in this place, whether we are recognized as such or not. It is our sacred right and responsibility to work for the good of that parish always, and so to be faithful to Christ and his church. If anybody has questions, now would be the time. Yeah.
What's going to happen to the other churches if you keep talking about Holy Angels? So will they get rid of the other churches and then everybody has to come to whatever will be called?
Well, let's be precise in our language. It's always good because they have meanings. So with the suppression, every parish will be suppressed.
Okay.
That means the parishes won't exist. What happens to the church buildings themselves is kind of a separate question. It's not kind of. It is a separate question. The first thing that happens will be the archbishop will dispose of those churches, will assign them those buildings and those grounds and all the rest of the property to a parish. Presumably, he will assign it to whatever new parish is created out of ours.
Okay.
At that point, it will be up to the parish, the pastor, to decide how to use them.
Okay. So the people from Fort Army are going to have to come to whatever Holy Angels will be called. How will that happen?
We do not know what it will look like. No one knows what it will look like.
Okay.
And I would encourage everybody to submit questions to the question box to allow us to be a little bit more organized, I suppose. The pastor will have the say. So, and pastors change, as we all know. So any new pastor may have a different way of organizing things. The only, I'm not trying to be a fearmonger here, but the only church that will have rights to Mass, sounds bad, but that the pastor will have to have Masses at, the only one he will have to have Masses at is whatever church is designated as the parochial church. Other churches he may choose to have Masses at. I'm assuming in most of the churches of the diocese, the pastors are not going to be mean and they're going to continue to have Masses at other churches. But how long that will go on, who knows? I think that's a fair statement.
But if there's only one pastor, which there is,
Yes.
when he presents that to the Archbishop, he's presented it in the name of the 4 existing parishes.
When the pastor petitions the bishop for extinction, he will have to do one petition for each parish.
Okay.
So he'll have to submit one for Holy Angels, laying the just cause and the reasons for extincting, and one for St. Michael's, and one for St. Peter's and Paul, and one for Sacred Heart. Each parish will need to be extincted as a separate act, and the bishop will issue a decree for each of them as well.
Okay.
Joe, at that time, they have to also designate which of the churches will be the parochial church and which ones. So we will find out at that point when it's issued. They have to identify which of the churches, and we have no clue what that might be. Which of the churches will be the parochial church and which ones won't.
Okay.
Which again, right, the churches may not be closed.
Correct.
Right.
Church closure is a whole nother ball of canonical wax.
Right.
Yep. And so our presentation is not focused on what will happen to the church buildings per se. It is focused on what will happen to the parish, because that is what is immediately facing us. And that is what we do sort of know. We know what will happen with that. Question: how will you know when a decree is issued? When the 10 days start counting, will the pastor notify the parish of the decree immediately? I believe the answer, and my beautiful wife can correct me when I'm wrong, is that we have 10 days from the issuing of the decree, not from when we find out that it was issued. He is to notify the parish immediately, but I don't think there is any specifics on what that notification exactly will look like. Now, I'm assuming that we will be told, but there is nothing that I know of in either the Beacons process or canon law, having read it very, very recently, like yesterday when I was preparing, that specifies how that notification has to take place. So the 10 days start counting as soon as the decree is issued, which is why we've got to be on the ball. And then we have to, I believe it's postmark our reply, which has to be in writing within that 10-day window. Mike, you're violating the rules here. You're outside of canon law. I'm just kidding.
The canon lawyer also specifically mentioned the possibility of delay of that. You send a third-class mail from Cincinnati.
Right.
It may be 5 days before.
Right. If he notifies the parish in writing through mail, it could be several days before we receive that notification.
So, yeah.
Then we'll have 5 days to respond instead of 10.
When it's received.
Is it received by the parish? Okay. So we'll have 10 days, regardless, one or the other. Who decided to implement beacons? Did they discuss other options? If so, why are we not aware of the answers to these questions? If this is not truly due to lack of priests, what is the purpose? Now, this person also cheated. I believe that's 4 questions on one card. Clear violation of the rules. Who decided to implement the beacons? And I'm speaking from my knowledge, so I may not have the totality of the answers. I am not all-knowing. I'm not even partial knowing. So who decided to implement it? Ultimately, it was the Archbishop. There were outside consulting firms. There was a firm that prepared sort of an assessment of the diocese, a demographic assessment. Then there was a separate firm, to my knowledge, that consulted to create a plan, which they termed Beacons of Light. And then the bishop, though, is the one who put forward the plan first to his priests, and then it was released to us in due term. Did they discuss other options? I don't think I can say with any authority whether they discussed other options. I'm not in the know. I'm not sure whether any of us really know what other options were discussed or at what levels they were discussed. It was made aware that this plan was in discussion for some time, but we do not know exactly what options were discussed. Why do we not know? Why are we not aware of the answers to these questions? I know that some people have pressed for some answers. We've gotten some answers, but not other answers. So I'm gonna hold on. I'm not going to answer that because I don't know. If this is not truly due to lack of priests, what is the purpose? I'm not trying to be evasive. I don't want to speak for the Archbishop. The stated purpose is because this will be good for our parishes. And that is why we oppose it, because we cannot see how it will be good for our parishes. We do not think there is any just cause. So, in a sense, we don't really need necessarily to know why they say it will be good. We can say this is what is happening, this is what we do not have, and this is why there is no just cause. It's not to be snarky or whatever, but that is, I think, where we have to be. Because I don't think we're going to get all of the answers or get lots of explanations at this point. That does not seem to be the modus operandi. Can you address the recent public claims that groups like this are pressuring the pastor to disobey? My wife wrote this question, so it is her fault. Recognize her handwriting. We ought to, as I mentioned, I do my best to respect and love our pastor and our priest and our archbishop. We should not feel ill will towards anybody. That's destructive. It is not disobedient. I think I highlighted a couple of reasons why it is not disobedient, either for us to engage in what we are doing or for the pastor to not request a decree of suppression. The pastor is the one, in canon law, who is tasked, and in the instruction and everywhere else, the pastor is the one who is tasked with examining, you might say, the health of the parish. If the pastor does not deem, it's up to the pastor's discretion even what kind of modification they would request. As I mentioned, there are other kinds of modifications out there. There's a modification where only one parish is suppressed and they're absorbed into the other parish. The pastor can request no modification or a whole host of modifications. That is their right. It is not disobedience for a pastor to do exactly what the church requires the pastor to do. As I mentioned as well, in the areas that I'm talking about, now we could be disobedient, we could do disobedient things, but meeting, expressing our concerns, networking with other people so that we are able to issue our concerns to our pastor and to the bishop, and then to appeal if necessary, is within our rights as Catholics, and therefore is not wrong. Doing what is right is never wrong. Many questions.
Oh, Lord.
How late do you folks want to stay tonight? All right, I'll try to be brief. Do most people know that the pastoral councils are being shrunk to 3 members per church? And so the majority of the vote is only 2 signatures to sign the extinctive union proposal. I'm gonna try to be brief and try to avoid getting into weeds here tonight, because the point is to sort of issue to the various councils what we have proposed here. It is true that they are changing the makeup of the pastoral councils. It appears as though there will not be full councils in existence from any of our parishes come January the 1st. I believe that's the date. January 1st, 2024. Instead, there will be much smaller councils made up of newly nominated and selected members. It's a little bit of a funky thing. I don't claim to know everything, but canon law, not a parish, a thing that isn't a parish can't have a parish council. So St. Joseph Pillar of Families can't have a parish council. It doesn't exist yet. Holy Angels, St. Michael, St. Peter and Paul, Sacred Heart can have parish councils, and finance councils, in fact, must have them. It is required. So what this is going to look like, I don't know. But yes, that is happening. I'm going to present it to the parish councils and finance councils that currently exist, because that's all that we can work with. I'll open it up later on. If I'm going to try to get... Do you have knowledge, intimate knowledge? Go ahead.
I had a question that deals with that.
Okay.
Because I think in one of the bulletins, or if maybe the pastor said it, they were looking for people to be on this new council.
Yes.
They were looking for nominations, but
Right.
didn't he mention that they wanted people that were friendly with the idea?
Yes.
Of it, and they didn't want people who were not, so.
It's actually a video. That is correct.
So if they're creating this new council, then do they have to wait? Do they have to
My understanding is that canonically the only people who could assign it for each parish would be the members of this new council who are from the parishes, are from their respective parishes. So let's say that on this new council there are 3 members who are from Holy Angels Parish. Those would be the members who would sign on to approve this request for a decree of suppression. Sign on or oppose, right? It would be their responsibility. I'm not gonna. We can draw our own conclusions. Some of them are comments. Okay. Can the number of available pastors be manipulated by the determination as to whether they are qualified to be a pastor or not? Very briefly, it is the bishop who assigns pastors. It's up to the bishop. That's the simplest answer. The bishop can do whatever he wants with that, or make whatever determination he wants with who can be a pastor, who's qualified to be a pastor. There's a list of qualities that's been published by the Vatican. There's a list of qualities actually outlined in canon law for pastors, but ultimately that's the bishop's decision. And that's one that he can make, has the authority to make, and one that we have to be obedient to. That's one where we cannot say, we refuse to accept your pastor. We can do that, but that would be wrong of us. That is disobedience. How does this affect Holy Angels School? And the comment... You're welcome. How does this affect Holy Angel School? The answer is nobody knows. Well, we can say this. Holy Angel School, when the decree is issued by the bishop, would be a part of that property that would have to be disposed of, not disposed of like flushed down the drain, but would have to be assigned to somebody. It would have to be assigned somewhere because it currently exists as part of Holy Angels Parish. Again, what will happen with that? What will the bishop decide? We can hope, but we do not know. Would you be willing to give this presentation? Yes. Although I will hate every minute of it, I would agree. Is it true that in canon law, once the new parochial church is chosen, the Easter Triduum and Midnight Mass and Holy Thursday, the Easter Triduum, Midnight Mass are supposed to happen at that declared parochial church? If I'm correct, this means that one Easter Triduum for all 4 churches. So again, there's a little bit of wiggle room here. The Roman Missal calls for the Easter Triduum, so for like Holy Thursday, the Mass of the Lord's Supper. That is to be celebrated in one church, and that church is to be the parish church for each parish. It says, however, that a Mass in the evening could be celebrated in another church to accommodate the large number of the faithful. What is unclear is if that Mass would be the Mass of the Lord's Supper or if it would just be another evening Mass. I'm not versed enough in, church liturgical law to know the answer to that, but it doesn't use the term another Mass of the Lord's Supper can be celebrated. It says another evening Mass or a daytime Mass could be celebrated in another church. My understanding is that the Easter Vigil as well. Excellent. Anybody 13 years and younger has to. Maggie, just kidding. My understanding, though, is that the Easter Vigil is only to be celebrated in one parish church, and to my knowledge, there is no allowance for it to be celebrated in other churches. Again, I could be wrong on that, but that's my understanding. So, to answer your question, the tendency would be to say yes, that it would be only celebrated in one church, and that church would be the parish church. The pastor couldn't move it to a different church. It does not seem, nor rotate it around. It seems like it would need to be celebrated in the parish church. Have they inquired? Have they inquired as to know how many parishioners are willing to travel to another town to be part of the parish? I don't know. There were numbers prepared when the study was done. I think that was prepared in 2018 maybe, 2018, 19 when the numbers were first compiled. So, of course, things have changed in those 5 years. I don't know the answer to that. School words kind of... Parish councils were advised that were previously instructed that we are advisory only. It appears for instinction that parish councils now have a vote and an opportunity to override the pastor. Is this correct? Interestingly enough, kind of. My reading of it, and I'm not a canon lawyer, so everything is with an asterisk that I could be wrong and probably am about something. The parish councils the instruction is that the parish councils are to approve and sign the pastor's request. It doesn't say that they must or they have to. It says that they are to do so. They do not trump the pastor, but they are supposed to do this. Theoretically, the bishop should take that into consideration when he receives the pastor's request, that if none of the parish and finance council have signed on to this, one would think that would be a consideration. Now, will it be? Who knows? But certainly that would be something that should be a factor in the appeal process, and that's one of the reasons why we are hoping to present it to the parish councils and the finance councils, so that in the likely case that there is an appeal, that we can say one of the things that was not met is that the parish and finance councils did not sign on to approve this, and it was done without their approval. I think that would be something in our favor. There is a question about the New World Order and whether this is part of the New World Order, and I'm going to not answer that question. I'm going to invoke my right and privilege as the person answering questions. I think that has answered all of the submitted ones. We have a few more. How are we on time? I'll answer the written ones, and then I'll...
It's the proper way.
Okay, well, we'll defer to the proper way first. What happens to the cemeteries in St. Joseph Pillar of Families? Good question. And the answer to that is, I believe, and I could be wrong about this as well, but I believe that would be part of what is disposed of when the bishop issues his decree. They will be assigned to a parish. And that parish would then be responsible for the upkeep of those cemeteries. Cemeteries are an interesting thing in canon law. If a parish has a cemetery, the cemetery has certain rights and privileges as well, interestingly enough. That would be my guess. Again, a lot of this is up to what the bishop decides, especially regarding property and finances and those sorts of things, buildings. Question, is this more of a business plan? Are they copying the megachurch Protestant formulation? Are we not able to work on better evangelization within the parish as it exists? Well, I would say yes, of course, to the third one. I don't know whether this is copying the megachurch Protestant formulation or what. I would just say that regardless, within the Catholic Church plan, this should not happen. That is our position, and that's what we are asking. That's why we are asking that it not happen, because in the history of the Catholic Church, parishes come into existence because of the organic collaboration of people who are in a community. And they only go out of existence, essentially, if that community of people ceases to exist. And I think it's a wild stretch to say that the community of faithful does not exist in Sydney, Ohio to support Holy Angels Parish, or in Fort Laramie to support St. Michael's Parish, or in McCartyville to support Sacred Heart. I think saying that those communities of faithful aren't there anymore is untrue. What's the larger motive? Again, I do not know. I've tried to understand, and I do not understand. And you addressed the number of priests is different that the Archdiocese of Cincinnati compiled. Can you explain the discrepancy? I don't know for sure. So the Archdiocese says that the number will decline to 100. Well, the firm that compiled the statistics for the Archdiocese said that the number of priests, active priests, will decline from the current 143 to 125 as the low in the next 10 years. I believe that is because they were supposing that all of the pastors would retire at the age of 70, which is allowed in the diocese, but it is not required under canon law. That's my guess, which is how you get at 125 earlier. Even if that is true, that 125 will happen within the next 10 years, and after that, the number will rise fairly rapidly to the tune of 5 or 6 additional priests every single year in the diocese for the foreseeable future. I believe we have something like 50-odd seminarians right now. Now, of course, not all of them will probably make it all the way to become ordained priests, but let's say that 40 do. That's in the next 5 years, we will have 40 new priests ordained, which would be pretty much par for the course. All right, I think what we're going to do is I'm going to wrap up the formality of the meeting. We'll end in prayer here. If you would remember, please, if you want to be kept informed, and if you want to volunteer to be part of the process and be notified when we are able to do certain things, please make sure that you put your name and email address or contact information on a note card and put it in the basket up here that says cards to sign up. Let us end in prayer. We'll ask Our Lady to intercede for us in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Remember, O most gracious Virgin Mary, that never was it known that anyone who fled to thy protection, implored thy help, or sought thine intercession were left unaided. Inspired by this confidence, we fly unto you, O Virgin of Virgins, our Mother. To thee do we come, before thee we stand, sinful and sorrowful. O Mother of the Word incarnate, despise not my petition, but in thy mercy hear and answer us. Amen. Saint Michael, the Archangel, defend us in battle. Be our protection against the wickedness and snares of the devil. May God rebuke him, we humbly pray. Thou, O Prince of the heavenly host, by the power of God, cast into hell Satan and all the evil spirits who prowl about the world, seeking the ruin of souls. Amen. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.